What is up, you guys? Welcome to Illumination Lab. My name is Justin, and today we're continuing with our cyberpunk style room here. This is part 2 of our room. If you haven't seen part 1, go check it out. That video was dedicated specifically to modeling, where in this one, we're going over lighting and colors. I'm excited for this one. This is going to be a fun one today, so without further delay, let's get into it. Alright, so hopping back into our scene here, what I'm going to do here is just bring in a area light. And so with this area light, it is going to be a little bit different. What I'm going to do with this one is use this one as our city. So what I'm going to do is just adjust it to this window here, and then eventually I'll reduce down the intensity here, and then I will plug in a PNG that I found of a cyberpunk city. So I'll just go ahead and throw that into the texture section here, and then turn on our visibility for this light. So you see immediately here we do have the city pulling up, and then I'll just adjust this area light to our window here and just kind of play around with it and see what kind of looks the best as far as our window scene goes. And that there's looking pretty good. I was playing with it a little bit off camera just to kind of get a good angle, but I pretty much like it how it is there. Of course, you can always kind of pull it off to the side and have that purple screen not showing, but I think that kind of adds to it a little bit. So we're just going to keep that how it is. And then of course you could play with the intensity and the exposure depending on what kind of look you guys want to go with, but I think with that I'll leave that there. And then what I'll do is I'll just copy and paste this area light here, and then I'm going to delete the PNG texture and then check off visibility. And so in the render view you can see immediately some of the light that's coming in. Now I do change it to like a light blue, just because with the blue lights and just the overall ambiance of our city here, it really is going to push in some blue colors in here. So I'm just going to kind of play around with some of the blues here, and of course the exposure and intensity. And so really I'm just trying to get a good idea of what I want this to look like. I think overall somewhat of a darker blue is going to look pretty nice, especially too with some of our assets. I really want something that is going to have a high contrast, and so I want a lot of our assets to be relatively darker, where primarily we want to kind of focus on more on the desk and the wall as well, and then again just have some high contrast. So you do see that there's a lot of different items off to the side or on the walls, but we're not necessarily seeing that exactly. So next up I'm going to bring in another area light and kind of shrink this down, and then bring it off to the wall here. And really with this one, typically when you look at different pictures of windows that are kind of adjacent to a wall, sometimes the outside lights can kind of shine on that wall specifically, or if it's like a relatively bright lights, you do get a pretty good shadow here. So what I'm going to do is just kind of adjust the shape of this. I want it to be a little bit more softer around the edges, again because it is some natural lights or even just city lights coming in through the window. Not necessarily natural light here, but really I'm just trying to create that effect here on the wall that there are a lot of lights kind of casting on this back wall. And then really with this, I'm just going to kind of play around with the intensity, and so I'm just gonna try and reduce it down a little bit so we get that nice sort of glow on the wall. and sometimes even changing it to a side angle like this, you can kind of achieve the same effect. So you get that small little hint of light that's coming through the window here. So, and then I'm just going to slightly increase the intensity here just so it's a little bit more prominent, and then just kind of play around with the light here. And then with this too, I could kind of match up this light specifically to the other one, just so the light is a little bit more consistent as far as the overall color goes of these lights. Okay, so next up, I'm going to copy and paste our light here, and then I'm just going to bring this over into the middle of the room. And then I'm just going to change our light shape here to a sphere, and then just kind of adjust our sphere here. And then I'm just going to kind of use this as a light that's hitting the ground. And so I just want to get this in place properly, and then I'm just going to rotate this. And really with this, you know, we have our references, and you can see in some of the references we do have significant light sources on the floor as well too. And so really with this, I'm just trying to create some sort of the same effect, and really I'm just trying to make somewhat of a softer light here. So with this, I'll just kind of play around with it and see exactly what I can get off of this. And then sometimes too, I'll bring in several other lights like this area light here, and then I'll just kind of play around with it again, just to kind of see exactly what the lights are going to look like, or what kind of look I can get by using multiple lights here. So again, a lot of this process is just kind of playing around with it and trying to really decide, one, what kind of look you want to go for, and two, really how are you going to achieve that as well. So okay, and for now, I think just kind of placing this light over here will be fine. And next up, what I'm going to do is actually bring in another area light here by just copy and pasting our original one here. If you do look at our original reference, we do have some light that is on the ceiling here. And so what I'm going to do is just take this light and then just apply it to the ceiling here. And then with this, I'll just kind of adjust it. I'll actually change my perspective on the Redshift render view here. And then this is a little too bright, so I'm just gonna pull down our exposure. And then our intensity as well too. And then similar with what we did with our other area lights, I think a good way to achieve some lights on the ceiling is just by rotating it here slightly so it's not as sharp. Yeah, that's creating a pretty good effect here. So I'm just going to kind of adjust the lights. And again, it looks like a lot of the light is bouncing off of this window here. And so I'm just going to adjust that to our wall. And then again, just kind of play around with our exposure and just kind of really hone in the look that we're trying to go for. And as we jump into our perspective here, we can kind of see a light hint of that light kind of going across our ceiling. So next up, I'm just going to copy and paste the same light here, and I'm just going to place it on this side of the wall now. And then also just a quick tip for you guys, a lot of times when you set up your lights first, what will happen is sometimes it will look a little bit different when you start to add in colors or textures, just because the white that we're using on a lot of our surfaces here, that light really bounces off of those surfaces. So sometimes when we add in different colors, the bounce is not going to be the same. So we probably will have to go back in and just adjust our colors here at the ends to make sure that whatever look we're going for is still consistent after the coloring process, essentially. And then sometimes what I'll do as well is I'll go over to our object manager over here, and then I'll just turn off some of these lights in the viewport here so I can get a better understanding of what our scene is looking like, where we can still kind of see everything, but we have the lights still going in this render view here. So. And then next up, I'm just going to go into each one of these lights here and then just kind of reduce down the spread and then just kind of adjust it, because again, it does seem quite light in here and I really want a lot of contrast. So I'm just going to kind of reduce down the spread here just so it's a little bit darker here. Okay, so next up, I'm bringing in another area light here and then just kind of reducing down our intensity. Okay, and so with this area lights, if we do look at our reference here, we do see that some of these references do have different lights on the wall and kind of just surrounding the scene here. So I'm just going to do the same thing here. I'm just going to reduce down the size of this light here, and then we're just going to put this light onto one of these cubes that's kind of sticking out here. And so I think if we kind of create some sort of contrasting look, or even just throwing in a orange color, that will kind of help complement our blues here. And so I'm just going to reduce down the size of our light and then just kind of line it up to this cube here. And then I'm just going to go into our color selector here, and I'm going to go with some sort of orange. I think that will look pretty good. And then of course, if we play with both the exposure and the intensity, we can again kind of just play around with the look here. And then next up, I'm just going to do kind of a similar concept here with our cylinder over here. So I'm just going to change the shape of our light here to a disc. And then I'm just going to again just adjust it to this object here. And with this light here, again, I'm just adjusting it to the edges of the circle here, just to make it a little bit more realistic. And then again, just kind of adjusting it to the wall. And then what I'm going to do is just kind of copy and paste this light here, and then I'm just going to shrink this one down, and then kind of do an extra light here, or just somewhat of a different color in the middle, just to kind of create some variety here. Okay, so that looks pretty good so far. Also, I can take a light here similar to our references, where I can have this orange light that kind of spreads across this bed here. So I'm just going to move this light over to our bed area here, and then I'm just going to change this one into a sphere, just so the light can kind of hit a little bit more versus the disc. And then I'm just going to kind of reduce down the intensity here, and then just kind of move this light off to the side. And then of course I'll just kind of play around with this and kind of see what looks best here. And really with this light, I'm just trying to find some sort of soft contrast that kind of goes across this bed here to kind of, again, help both complement and add some warmness to the colder light that comes in through the windows. So cool, so that looks pretty good so far. So what I'm going to do is just copy and paste this light here, and then I'm going to change this one into a mesh. And actually what I'm going to do with this is just change our lighting here. Before, what I did is I actually made this kind of shine onto our cylinder here. So instead of doing that, I'm just going to change the light into a mesh, and then I'm just going to take our tube and then just apply it to this light here. And so this shape will actually outline this tube here. So if I pull up the Redshift render view, you can see that it is highlighting this area. And then I just click on visible here, and again, just kind of lights up that specific item. So I found a way where I don't have to necessarily actually line up the item itself, but I can actually use the item as the light itself. So I'm just going to do the same thing with our cube here. Turn this into a mesh, and then just bring down our cube, click on visible, and there we go. That looks a little bit better. Plus we are getting some lights that's kind of coming off both ends here. So as I rotate the camera, that looks pretty solid. So I think that's just a much better choice than what we originally had. And again, that kind of looks a little bit more realistic. I do kind of like that idea, and so what I'm going to do is actually do the same thing to our Wi-Fi symbol here. So as I open up this null and drop in one of our bars here, you can see it is illuminating our bar. And then I'm just going to kind of drop down the intensity to a 2 here. And with this, I'm going to keep the color the same, but I'm just going to slightly change the intensity to the light, so it kind of gives a almost like a shading effect, where we have our bottom a little bit darker, where at the top of the Wi-Fi icon it's a little bit brighter. So kind of a cool effect there. Now, to keep our scene visible, I'm just going to turn off that light in our display here. Okay, so next up, if you see off to the right here, we did make a kind of like a music bar here. So we're just going to kind of take that same technique over to the bar here. So what I'm going to do is actually do some sort of green color here over off to the side. And then again with the lights, I'm just going to set up the light as a mesh and then put each one of these assets into our mesh. And so it's kind of illuminating the icon itself or the material itself. So again, I'm just dragging and dropping into our shape here. And then as you can see in the viewport, it's going to kind of illuminate that specific item that we pulled in here. And then I'm just going to do that for all of the icons here on the bar. And then just kind of, again, illuminate all of this so you can kind of see it off in the distance. And with this, we could kind of make it a cool blue color. And then, of course, with these bars, they'll be green as well. Again, just kind of throwing in a few different lights here just to kind of see exactly what look we can get, and then we could kind of always play around with that in the future here. Other than that, that looks pretty good so far for our lighting here. Next up, we're going to start applying some colors. Of course, we'll always kind of jump back into the lighting and adjust it, but let's jump into our color section of the video. All right, so kicking off some of our colors, I'm just going to go into the Grayscale Gorilla library here. And with this, I'm trying to find a cool looking grounds color and texture here. So I'm just going to find some cool looking wood, similar to our reference here where, you know, some of our references use some really cool wooden planks. I'm going to try and achieve the same sort of look here. And then we do have to bring in some carpet textures. I'm sure we'll bring in a few different metals as well too. So with this part of the video, I'm just kind of shopping around and seeing exactly what colors that we have within Grayscale Gorilla. We will look into the Redshift library as well too, but really with this, I'm just kind of going around and seeing exactly what we have to work with and kind of identifying what's going to be best for our scene here. I think while we select colors, it's always important to kind of throw in something just to kind of see what it looks like, because you never really know what you may come across. And so that's kind of like the fun process of this particular part, is that you can really just find something a little bit different, apply it, and if you're not feeling it or anything, you can always adjust it, or it'll sometimes give you an idea for something else. So feel free to grab what kind of intrigues you, and then you can always again adjust. So All right, so we have our colors, and so I'm just going to give it a quick save, turn on our Redshift render view here, and then first I'm just going to start with this back wall here. So I'm just going to line up our camera here and apply our color. And so immediately you can see in the render view, we do get a nice gray color, and it's very much texturized since this is a more of a brush style look here. So you can kind of see as the render view is rendering here, you can kind of see a few of that bumpiness that comes with that color here. Now, as we apply the planks to the floor here, again, you can kind of see them kind of lining up exactly how we like it. Again, it is a little bit darker, so we can't necessarily see it as well. So sometimes what I'll do is just bring up this cropping section here, just so I can get a slightly quicker render of exactly what I'm looking at. And so sometimes with doing that, you can kind of get a better idea of what a specific section is looking like. So that looks pretty cool so far. I do have this camera grip texture that I can apply to some of our chords here. I'll just exit out of the render view here and then just start to apply some of these colors onto these wires here. And so I'll just kind of go to each one and just apply this camera grip color to these wires here. And usually by doing this with the render view cut off, it can sometimes give you a faster feedback that way versus having to actually have to process it within the render view. And so again, I'm just going to go around the scene and make sure that I have all the cables colored properly here. Okay, so I think I have most of those here. I'm just kind of moving the camera around just to make sure. And then I'm just going to jump back into Grayscale Gorilla, and then we're just going to look at a few different options here as well. And with this tech product section here in Grayscale Gorilla, they have tons of really cool colors here that is going to be something that is going to be useful for this cyberpunk area, just because it is a lot more tech based as far as the colors and textures go within these. And so we'll really utilize this section even more just because of that, because that's exactly the palette that we're looking for. So we'll just kind of browse around here and see what cool stuff we can grab here. And then we'll just kind of cruise down this as well, and again just kind of see what they have here as far as some colors and textures that we could maybe pop into the scene here. So we'll just kind of cruise through this real quick. And then here I found this really cool looking metal color here, so I'm just going to import that in, and that would actually look pretty cool on our device box that we have at the top of the scene here. So I'm just going to kind of apply that to the box here. And then to get an idea of what it's looking like, I'm just going to bring up the Redshift render view again, and then you can see all the immediate changes that we made here. And then I'm just going to try and see what our back wall looks like with this color. But yeah, it's a little too much, so I'm just going to undo that here. And then we did forget this wire as well, so we'll just apply that texture on there as well. And then here there is a few different metals. We'll just apply a few of these metal colors to the desk here. And then we do have this keyboard color as well that we will apply to the keyboard as well. And then we'll just take a few of these other ones here and just apply it to some random surfaces here, just to kind of colorize some of these objects here. And then as I kind of zoom in here, I can kind of tell that the wall is a little too far forward, so I'm just going to try and find the wall here and just kind of turn that off real quick and then bring this asset forward a bit. And so if I go to apply the color, and it is still a little too far back, so again, I'll just turn off our wall, bring the asset forward a little bit, just so it's kind of actually sitting on the wall versus being inside. And then there we go. So as I apply that color, you can see that it actually is on there this time. And then again, I'm just kind of going around and seeing what we really have within the scene and what can be colorized a certain way here. Okay, cool. So next up, I have to do this chair here. So I'm just going to apply a few different colors to this chair here. And really off screen, I was just kind of playing around with it a little bit more just to make sure I had exactly what colors I wanted to work with. And then again, once I identified what colors I wanted, I can kind of apply it to the specific surfaces that are either within that category or what I know what color it's supposed to be, depending on what colors I have. And sometimes too, if you're unfamiliar with either the product that you're working on or just the colors in general, you will have to kind of play around with it, with bringing it in, checking what the Redshift render view looks like or any sort of render view you're working in, and then just kind of adjusting it depending on what the colors or textures may look like. And so it is something that you will have to play around with though. And then we did find this cool looking carpet texture, and I applied it to our carpet here. And then as we look in our Grayscale Gorilla library, really what I'm looking for is going to be a few different colors or textures for our posters here. And so I'm just going to kind of cruise around here and see exactly what might work. And then I did find this one here. It looks like a whole bunch of newspaper, so I'm just going to kind of bring in this as well, and then I could bring in some of these others as well too, And then this would look pretty cool on the wall, just to kind of give us a little bit more color and texture. Again, it doesn't have to be extremely detailed because it's going to be in somewhat of a darker area. Alright, so next up here, I'm just going to jump into Quixel Bridge and see if I can find a few different assets here, and then I'll just kind of pop them back into Cinema4d and I'll show you what I found. Alright, so I pulled in a lot of these cool looking posters and different abstract colors, and of course we brought in some plants and a few box assets as well. And so I'll just kind of copy and paste all of this and then bring it over into our file here. And then I'll just paste this all. Cool, so first up, what I'm going to do is I found this cool looking abstract color, and so I'm just going to apply it to our walls here. And with this, I really like this because it kind of adds to that color that we were looking for, as far as that abstract blue. It really kind of gives off more of a cyberpunk look. It's a little bit more grimier as well too, so it's gonna add some really cool looking texture to our walls here. Now I'm just going to give it a quick save and then bring up our render view here, and then you can see immediately what our wall looks like. And what's really cool is it's just very much discolored, and the color is pretty much all over the place, and so that's a really cool look. I actually like that a lot better than what we currently had it as. And then again, I'm just going to bring in this crop tool here, and I'm just going to kind of see what this wall is going to look like. I accidentally pulled in a few textures here, so I'm just going to go and delete these. And as I delete it, you can kind of see that that single texture is pretty prominent here. And then you could kind of see that purple and the blue, and so yeah, I like that quite a bit here. So I think we'll just go ahead and keep that how it is and kind of just play off of that here. Cool, so next up, what I'm going to do is we're going to set up these plants here. So I'm just going to adjust our camera to where the plants are, and then I'm just going to go over to our plant asset here and then just select each individual one and kind of see exactly what they look like. These will be fine. They're a little bit smaller and they'll work for sure. Next up, I do have this poster as well too. I did forget to throw in these posters here, so I'll just kind of do that. When they are brought in from Quixel Bridge, they have this luminance on, and so to make sure that it looks right, we're just going to turn off the luminance there. And then I found these cardboard box textures as well. I just put that off to our boxes down there at the bottom, and a few more of these poster assets as well on the wall. And cool, so that looks pretty good so far. I'm just going to go back into these plants. I'll actually grab this one here. And this one's going over here on this pot. And then as you can see, it's kind of in the way of this wire here. So I'm just going to kind of reduce down the size and then kind of adjust it so the wire's not clipping through this plant here. And then I'm just going to go into the plant itself and reduce down some of these colors here to make it look a little bit more dull. and then I'll just kind of have it bent over here as if it's somewhat neglected here. So same thing with this one. I'm just going to kind of move this one over to this other side here. I like bringing in these plants just because this room does have a lot of geometric objects, and so having something like a plant will kind of help cut up a lot of these shapes here, or even just kind of add in some variety as well. All right, so as you guys can see, we do have a lot of different colors here, but we can always use some more. So let's just hop back into Grayscale Gorilla here and see if we can find some other either texturized colors here or just some unique colors in general. And then we'll try and bring them in and see what exact look we can get with them here. And also I do need some colors for these books as well too, so I'm just going to find a few different leather textures here that I could bring in. It really doesn't have to be really detailed because again, most of these objects are gonna not be too much in the light, but we do need to add some colors to kind of give it some more realism or to just add in variety in general. And so we'll just kind of take some of these colors here. We found some cool greens and purple and brown, so I'm just going to apply those to the books here. And then more of our poster assets as well. Now I did find in Quixel Bridge this damaged wall asset, so I'm just going to apply this to our walls here and kind of condense them down to this wall. And then again with this graph, I'm just going to kind of move it off of the wall here just to make sure that it's actually hanging on the wall and not inside of the wall. And really with these nets, a couple moments here, we're just going to kind of hop in and out of our scene here, and then also look at a few different colors and textures as well, just to make sure that we can have some more variety within the scene here. I'm actually going to also jump back into Quixel Bridge and see if I can find some more assets here as well, and really kind of enhance the scene as much as possible. All right, so I did find these colors and textures here, so I'll just kind of bring these in. And I found a few more abstract paintings and then a few different poster objects as well. So we'll just try to apply some of that to our walls here. And then I did find a cool looking damaged texture as well that we'll apply to the wall. So really we'll just kind of enhance this as much as possible and really create a lot of different textures within the scene here. Cool. And so as I wrap up here, again, I'm just kind of going around the scene, seeing exactly what we need to either add a color to or change up. We do have a pretty massive library of colors here so far. So I'll just take the next couple moments to make sure that I have everything looking to how I want it to, and then we'll really adjust it from there. Cool, so that looks pretty good so far. I think we'll stop there and then try and render this thing out and see exactly what it's looking like. And then what we'll do is we'll hop into the wrap-up section of this portion and we'll just go over this whole thing here. So let's jump into that now. All right, so jumping into our wrap-up section here, this is the finished overall piece. I did go in and kind of adjust the colors slightly just to make sure that the colors did bounce how I wanted it to. Overall, I do like how it came out. You can tell that in certain areas like the poster or even that blue against the wall here as far as the light goes didn't really bounce off how I wanted it to. It really came out to kind of look somewhat flat, or the polygons in general really wasn't there, so I can always just go back in and adjust that. But overall, it's not bad for our first initial render here. As we kind of look at the scene here, I think the lighting is pretty good for what we did. And then of course we kind of made the scene as busy as possible here. Again, if you guys watched part one of this, we modeled the majority of the scene besides the bed and the computers. I think we did pull in one or two more assets as well, as far as like the drinks and some of the pottery as well too. But other than that, we pretty much set up the room as far as modeling goes. And then really it wasn't that too advanced either. And so hopefully this is encouraging for you guys, where you can again kind of create something for yourself. You really don't have to be a big modeling expert to achieve something like this. I would say most of this is going to be more relatively easy. It just kind of takes time and really just going back in and reworking the scene. With this video overall, I did have to turn it off multiple times and really just kind of play around with it and see exactly what I liked. Of course, we did have our references as well, which is a big help, so we can always look back at our references and make sure that what we are doing kind of lines up, or if we have any concerns or questions, we can always kind of go back to our reference and kind of see what some other people did to kind of inspire us or to kind of guide us in what we are doing. But overall, I think it turned out quite fine, especially for our first render here. And then of course, depending on what you guys are working on, you can always kind of go in, adjust it yourself, or change the camera or the perspective in general. But other than that, that's pretty much it for this one. Let me know what you guys think, if you think I should add anything or change anything, or if you have any questions on how I did something, please shoot it down in the comment section and I can go over it for you. Also, let me know if you enjoy videos like this, if you want it a little bit shorter or longer, or if you want me to do more modeling in general. Again, just let me know. Other than that, that's the end of the video. You guys have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you on the next one.